Sorry, sir, are you guys open?
Hey! I'm coming!
We are talking Drive Back, directed by Cody Ashford. And I'm going to be somewhat vague in my plot synopsis here because this is a mystery style horror movie after all. The easiest way I would try and give you a broad idea about what it's like, it's kind of similar to a time loop movie, a little bit like Groundhog Day, but not exactly. So the broad synopsis is that we have a couple that have recently got engaged and they have visited their parents, or one of the guy's parents' house who lives out in the forest somewhere. And although they are engaged, this couple have had some problems. And they want to drive back to where they live, and we are told that it's about a 3.5 hour journey. But they decide to go down a shortcut in through the woods, and we all know how these things turn out. And when they start on this road, they start to experience strange things. The most innocuous, I suppose, is that they seem to be forgetting things, or the guy will forget certain things, but the girl will remember, and then vice versa, and things like this. They keep kind of seeing the same things on the road, like there's evidence of a car wreck. There's the kind of bumper in the middle of the road, for example, and they drive past it, then they drive past it again, things like this. But then there's more kind of strange things that happen, including, but not limited to, what appears to be a hooded nutter in the woods who may be a cannibal. And as the film goes on, things will become somewhat surreal. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what works in this movie. I have to say, it's centered around really two people. We get a smattering of smaller roles, and as such, I think the movie's weight of kind of acting ability and characterization rests on these two people. And I do think we get a good performance from both actors. I think they both do a good job of having this couple, which, they're engaged, but are they engaged for the right reasons? The woman has recently found out she's pregnant, and maybe they've got engaged for that rather than through general love, although there do seem to be some affection, but there is definitely kind of some issues there. And the guy's got issues with his family, with his father especially. So the acting is sort of solid, I would suggest, and as we go on, I think the characterization is also fairly solid. We get, without going into loads of backstory, we get a good idea of this couple and their sort of somewhat kind of realistic relationship problems. And, we get in what is ultimately somewhat of a fantastical movie, the kind of complex relationship that maybe these two have, in many ways I feel is quite grounded, which gives this kind of movie a sort of earnest feel to it. I have to say, the first half of the movie, the setup and kind of part way into this mystery, is an excellent example of mind-bending horror. An intriguing setup. What is going on? It seems to be bizarre, supernatural, very unnerving. This kind of strange stretch of road seems ominous and unpredictable. And we have this kind of these kind of spooky woods with mist and all this kind of stuff, and these sort of strange things that we see on the road, like this car and it's covered in kind of spiders and stuff. I think the movie does a good job of setting a creepy atmosphere, and we don't quite know what's going on. Like, for example, at one point the couple stop and the girl wants to kind of, you know, go to the toilet basically. So she's squatting in the woods, but there's something kind of like seemingly quite large, you know, hurtling towards her through the kind of like the trees and stuff. What is it? And I think these kind of little moments here are genuinely quite terrifying. And you know, it kind of thinks, wow, what's kind of going on? What's the kind of the answer here? And you know, it's you're genuinely intrigued to what's going to happen. So, what doesn't work? Now, as this movie progressed, and more strange things start to happen, and the movie kind of adds more elements to it, I was thinking, okay, I'm feeling I'm getting an idea of where it's going. Is the movie going to give me a satisfying reason about why this is happening? What's actually kind of going on? And as the film went on, at least part of my suspicions were correct. I kind of guessed maybe what was at least partially going on, certainly in regards to our couple. So I think at this point, I was thinking, why aren't the couple kind of at the same point as me? Clearly there's weird things going on. You know, they seem to be not quite as willing to question why things are as weird as they are, if this makes sense. They do sort of, you know, they are confused, but there's not that sort of degree of panic and trying to kind of think, hang on a second, let's try and kind of like put this together. There's none of those sort of really scenes here. They just sort of seem to blindly just go on really without really understanding or even taking time to kind of like consider anything. So there's that. And as the film comes to its conclusion, clearly I'm not going to tell you anything more than that really. Again, I feel you can kind of understand the mechanics of how it relates to our couple, but you have no idea as to the reasons why, is the best way I would describe it without really telling you anything here. It's just supernatural stuff, is the best way I would describe it. And I think if you're a type of person who likes to have that kind of narrative where things make sense, it's kind of explained, you can kind of say, right, I can understand what's happened and why it's happened and the reasons for it. This isn't this movie. You know, like I said, I feel it gives you maybe a partial idea about what's happening as specifically regards to our characters, but the general sort of overview about what's kind of going on, I feel like it starts to get a little frustrating, you might say. And as the film goes into its second half, again, even though I think it's still an intriguing mystery, the characters, again, they maybe come across scenes maybe that they've kind of almost experienced before. But I don't think they act in a way that would be conducive. If they've accepted this is a fact, then I think how they act maybe is not like you would do. It's the best way I describe it. Again, I know I'm being vague. And it gets a little frustrating. It gets a little, I think as the movie goes on, it gets a little over the top at times, and you really question, I think, things that are happening, why characters are doing certain things, why they might have not made other choices. And I think it loses, at least for me, some of the goodwill that it has built up in that first half, which I think sets up such an intriguing mystery. I feel it really then kind of not completely delivered. I wouldn't say it completely failed, but I just think it didn't maybe deliver. It set itself up for such a kind of like complex and intriguing mystery. I think it was going to be, unless it was like, you know, some team of amazing filmmakers here that were just like at the cutting edge of mystery filmmaking, it was going to falter, and I think it did. But it's still an intriguing movie, and I still think it does have some very kind of creepy moments, and at least a partially interesting kind of intriguing mystery. Albeit I think it's not as fulfilling as it might have been. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.